Welcome to your deep dive. Looks like we're tackling the changing world order today.
Yeah, you've given me quite a stack of material here.
Well, it's a pretty hot topic. Everyone's talking about it. We've got Dalio's principles for dealing with the changing world order, of course.
Right, a classic.
Plus some comparisons to historical empires like the Dutch, the British, and even ancient China.
Wow, going way back. It seems like you want the really long view on this, huh?
Exactly. I think it's important to see where we fit into the bigger picture. Everyone's talking about this big cycle that Dalio describes.
Oh, yeah, the big cycle.
Is it really like a roadmap for how empires rise and fall?
It is, in a way. It's like, think of it like a repeating pattern.
Okay.
Dalio argues that empires tend to go through these predictable cycles, driven by things like debt, innovation, internal stability.
Makes sense.
He even compares it to the human life cycle. You
Yeah.
know, you're born, you grow, you reach your peak, and then eventually,
Decline sets in.
exactly, decline sets in.
Okay, I can see the analogy. But where are WE in this cycle right now?
The million-dollar question.
Right. Are we on the upswing, or are things starting to head south?
Well, according to Dalio, the world is currently in the late stages of a long-term debt cycle.
A debt cycle.
Yeah, one that began after World War II. Basically, we've been living beyond our means for decades.
Oh, boy.
And now, well, the bill is coming due. He sees this as a major warning sign, similar to what happened in the 1930s before the Great Depression.
Wow, that's a sobering thought. So if we're really in the late stages of this cycle, does that mean a decline is inevitable?
Well, Dalio doesn't believe in inevitability. He actually outlines 18 factors that determine an empire's strength.
18.
18, yep. And he argues that by understanding these factors, we can make better decisions, potentially avoid the worst outcomes.
18 factors is a lot to digest. Can we break that down a bit? What are some of the most important ones to focus on right now?
Absolutely. In our current context, I'd say education and innovation are crucial.
Okay, those make sense.
Also, we got to consider the debt burden.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Economic competitiveness, too. And then, of course, there's internal order and external order.
So, is the country stable within its own borders?
Exactly. And is the global landscape peaceful, or are there a lot of conflicts and tensions between nations?
Right. It's all connected. So education, innovation, debt burden, economic competitiveness, internal and external order. Those are the big ones to watch.
Those are some of the key factors shaping the world order right now, yeah. For example, strong education systems and a culture of innovation, those tend to lead to greater economic success.
Sure, makes sense.
And global influence, too. But on the flip side, if a nation's debt burden gets too heavy, it can really stifle growth and create instability.
So it's a balancing act.
It is.
You need to invest in the future, but also manage your resources responsibly. What about internal and external order? How do those factors play into it?
Well, think of internal order as the level of, social cohesion and political stability within a country.
Go ahead.
When a nation is divided, whether by political ideology, social class, ethnic tensions, it just makes it that much harder to address challenges,
Yeah.
maintain a position of power.
It's like everyone's pulling in different directions. You're not going to get very far that way.
Exactly. And external order is similar, but on a global scale. When the world is unstable, lots of conflict, distrust between nations, well, it just becomes way more difficult to cooperate, to solve problems together.
Right. Like what's happening now with the U.S. and China.
Yeah, that's a prime example.
Their rivalry is creating a lot of tension.
A lot of uncertainty, yeah.
It seems like those two are at the center of all the conversations about the changing world order.
They are major players, that's for sure.
But is this rivalry really as significant as everyone says it is?
It's definitely one of the defining features of the 21st century, I'd say.
Okay.
What makes it so significant is that it's multidimensional.
Multidimensional.
It's not just military competition. It's also an economic rivalry, a technological race, and even an ideological clash. It's a lot.
Wow, so it's like a four-headed dragon. Can you give us some examples of how these different dimensions are playing out?
Sure. On the economic front, we've seen trade wars and tariffs, right? Both the U.S. and China are trying to gain an advantage there.
Yeah, we've all seen the headlines.
And on the technology front, the competition is fierce. 5G networks, artificial intelligence, things like that.
Right.
And companies like Huawei are getting caught in the middle of this geopolitical game.
It sounds like a high-stakes game of chess, but with the whole whittled as the board.
Yeah.
It's not just about the U.S. and China, though, right? Are there other players we should be watching?
Absolutely. The global landscape is way more complex than it used to be.
More players on the field.
Yeah, definitely. You've got nations like India, Russia, the European Union. They're all vying for influence as well.
So with all these moving pieces, how can we even begin to make sense of it all? It feels like the world is spinning faster and faster.
It can be overwhelming, for
Yeah.
sure. That's where Dalio's principles can be really helpful, I think. He argues that even though the specifics of each situation might be different, the underlying patterns of how empires rise and fall, they're pretty consistent
Interesting.
throughout history, I mean. By studying those patterns, we can start to, anticipate challenges, identify opportunities, make more informed decisions.
So it's like having a cheat sheet for understanding global events. Okay, I'm ready to dive deeper.
Let's do it. To really grasp what's happening today, I think it's helpful to look back at some historical examples.
Sounds good to me.
Shall we start with the Dutch and their rise to prominence in the 17th century?
Let's go for it. Okay, so last time we were talking about Ray Dalio's big cycle and how it applies to the current world order. You even mentioned some historical parallels, like what can we learn from past empires?
Yeah, it's fascinating how certain patterns keep repeating throughout history, despite all the differences in time and context. Like, take the Dutch in the 17th century.
Oh, yeah, the Dutch.
They were like the Silicon Valley of their time.
Yeah.
A small nation that became a global powerhouse through innovation and trade and financial savvy.
I remember reading about the Dutch East India Company. Weren't they trading all over the world, bringing back spices and textiles, all sorts of exotic goods?
Exactly. They were pioneers in finance, too. They developed the first stock market,
Wow.
sophisticated banking systems.
I know it's familiar.
But their success also contained the seeds of their decline.
Oh, how so?
Well, as their wealth grew, they became complacent. They
Complacent.
got overextended,
Yeah.
accumulated a massive debt burden, their innovation stagnated.
They lost their edge.
They did. It's a classic example of how too much success can lead to, complacency.
It's like that saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall.
Precisely. And then there's the British Empire. They actually learned from the Dutch. They built their own global empire.
Right, through trade and naval power and shrewd diplomacy, I guess.
Exactly. The sun never sets on the British Empire.
Yeah, but eventually their sun did set.
It did. Just like the Dutch, they overextended.
Debt got too high.
Soared. And they faced growing challenges from rising powers,
Like the United States.
like the United States. Plus, they failed to adapt to the changing technological landscape, the Industrial Revolution.
So even the mightiest empires aren't immune to the forces of history.
Nope. Nobody is.
It makes you wonder, what lessons can we learn from these examples? Apply them to the current situation with the U.S. and China.
That's the key question, right?
Yeah.
I think one of the most important takeaways is that no nation stays on top forever. Global power is constantly shifting. And those who fail to adapt, they'll eventually decline.
So what does that mean for the U.S.? Are we destined to follow in the footsteps of the Dutch and the British?
Not necessarily. The U.S. still has a lot of strengths. A dynamic economy, a powerful military,
Right.
a tradition of innovation.
But there are warning signs, too.
There are.
That growing national debt, political polarization,
Yeah.
social divisions, all kind of reminiscent of what happened to those declining empires, huh?
Yeah, there are definitely some echoes there.
What about China? Are they destined to become the next global superpower?
They're certainly on that trajectory, it seems. I mean, they've experienced incredible economic growth
They have.
over the past few decades. And they're strategically investing in key areas: technology, infrastructure, education.
Smart moves.
They're also expanding their global influence through initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative, creating new trade routes and partnerships across Asia, Africa, Europe.
It's like they're building a new Silk Road for the 21st century. So with all these shifts in power happening, where does that leave the rest of the world?
It's becoming a more multipolar world.
Multipolar.
It means there are multiple centers of power, each with its own interests and ambitions.
Right. Makes sense. So it's not just a two-way race between the U.S. and China.
Not anymore, no. Take India, for example.
Right.
They have the potential to become a major player. Large population, growing economy, young workforce.
A lot of potential.
But they face challenges too. Poverty, corruption, infrastructure deficits.
So it's a mixed bag for everyone,
It is. It's a giant game of risk, really.
with different players making their moves, trying to gain an advantage. What about potential flashpoints? Like, what are some of the geopolitical hotspots we should be watching?
Taiwan is definitely one to watch.
Taiwan.
The tensions between China and Taiwan are, well, they're long-standing. And the U.S. backing Taiwan, it makes it a potential flashpoint for conflict.
Right, right.
Any escalation there could have global repercussions.
No doubt. We've already seen how the U.S. and China are clashing over trade and technology. Are there any other potential hotspots we should be aware of?
The South China Sea is another one.
Yes.
China's claiming sovereignty over large portions of the sea, right? But several neighboring countries dispute those claims.
Leading to territorial disputes.
Exactly. And occasional military posturing. The U.S. is involved too, of course, conducting freedom of navigation operations to challenge China's claims.
Sounds like a recipe for conflict.
It's definitely a volatile situation.
And of course, there's the Middle East, which has been a source of instability for, well, decades.
The Middle East is a whole other story.
Right.
It's a complex web of religious and ethnic and political rivalries, with outside powers often getting entangled in the conflicts.
It's a region where even small events can have huge ripple effects.
Absolutely.
So we've got Taiwan, the South China Sea, the Middle East. Any other potential hot spots to add to our watch list?
The Arctic is becoming increasingly important.
The Arctic.
Yeah, as the ice caps melt, new shipping routes open up.
Yeah.
And access to natural resources. Countries like Russia, Canada, the U.S., they're all vying for control.
It's like a new Cold War, but with icebergs. Okay, so we've got a pretty good sense of the key players and the potential flashpoints. But what about the underlying forces shaping this new world order? Like, what are the big trends we need to understand?
Well, one of the biggest is the decline of the West.
The decline of the West, what do you mean by that?
For centuries, Europe and the United States, they've dominated global affairs. They set the rules, which shaped the international order.
Right.
But that dominance is waning.
So you're talking about a fundamental shift in the balance of power. Why is the West declining?
Several factors at play. Economically, the West has faced sluggish growth, rising debt levels. Politically, there's increasing polarization, a loss of trust in institutions.
Makes sense.
And demographically, many Western countries are facing aging populations, declining birth rates.
And all of this is happening as other powers like China and India are rising. It's like the tide is turning.
Exactly. And this shift in power is creating a lot of uncertainty and anxiety. One way this is manifesting is through the rise of nationalism.
Nationalism.
Around the world, we're seeing a resurgence of national pride,
Okay.
a desire to put national interests first, even at the expense of global cooperation.
It's like everyone is retreating into their own corners, building walls instead of bridges.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
This trend is being fueled by a number of factors. Economic insecurity, cultural anxiety, a perception that the global system is rigged against ordinary people.
So globalization's taking a hit. It's every nation for itself now.
In many ways, yes. And this is making the world a more fragmented and unpredictable place.
Okay, so we've spent the last couple deep dives exploring, the changing world order, all those historical patterns, the rising powers, the potential flashpoints. It's a lot.
It is. It's a lot to take in.
So now let's get practical.
Okay.
What can we as individuals actually do to prepare for this uncertain future?
Right. Well, this is where Ray Dalio's advice, I think, really shines. He doesn't just lay out the problems, right?
Right.
He offers a framework for building resilience. And it starts with something we can all control, our own finances.
That's right. Dalio talks a lot about that in Principles, like understanding your own financial situation. It's like step 1 in his resilience playbook. But to be honest, sometimes personal finance stuff, it feels a little intimidating. Like, where do you even begin?
Well, Dalio keeps it pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
He suggests starting with what he calls a personal financial statement.
Right.
It's basically a snapshot of your income, your expenses, your assets, your debts.
So it's like taking inventory.
It is. It helps you see where your money is going
Right.
and identify areas where you might be vulnerable.
Okay, so it's like a financial checkup, right? You assess your current health before figuring out a treatment plan. But does this really apply to everyone? What if you're not exactly, a high roller?
Dalio believes it's essential for everyone, regardless of income level. It's about taking control of your finances, so you're not constantly just reacting to external forces.
Right, so you're proactive.
Exactly. Once you have a clear picture of your situation, then you can start making more informed decisions about saving, investing, managing debt.
Makes sense. It's about building a solid foundation so you're not swept away when the tide turns, so to speak. So, okay, we've got our financial house in order. What's next on Dalio's resilience checklist?
Diversification. This is a concept that comes up a lot in principles.
Okay.
Dalio is a big believer in not putting all your eggs in one basket, both in terms of investments and your life in general.
So spread the risk. Don't bet the farm on any one company or one country, one industry, right?
Yeah. Exactly. When it comes to investments, Dalio suggests a mix of stocks, bonds, real estate, even things like gold or commodities. You want to create a portfolio that can weather different economic storms.
And this applies to our skills and experiences too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like the more diverse we are, the more adaptable we'll be in a changing world.
Precisely.
Is that?
Learn new things, explore different fields, build relationships with people from diverse backgrounds. The more arrows you have in your quiver, the more prepared you'll be for whatever the future throws at you.
It's like having a Swiss Army knife of skills. You're ready for anything. All right, so we're financially savvy and we're diversified. What else does Dalio recommend?
Staying informed.
Of course.
This is a big one. We're bombarded with information these days, but it's so important to filter out the noise. Focus on the signals that matter.
So less scrolling through social media, more reading in-depth analysis, more research.
That's a good starting point.
Yeah.
Dalio encourages people to study history, economics, geopolitics. Pay attention to what the experts are saying, but also look at what they're doing. How are they investing their own WN money?
Follow the smart money, as they say.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's not just about absorbing information passively, right? You have to think critically, connect the dots.
Exactly. Dalio really emphasizes that, developing critical thinking skills. Don't just accept everything you read or hear at face value. You got to question assumptions, challenge conventional wisdom, think for yourself.
So be skeptical, be curious, don't be afraid to ask why. Okay, so we're staying informed, we're thinking critically, but let's face it, the world can feel pretty overwhelming sometimes.
It can.
How do we stay sane amidst all this chaos, all this uncertainty?
Well, that's where mindfulness comes in.
Mindfulness.
Dalio is a big believer in the power of meditation and mindfulness practices. He argues that, cultivating a calm and focused mind can really help you manage stress, make better decisions, navigate those difficult situations more effectively.
So it's not just about financial resilience, it's about mental and emotional resilience too.
Exactly. And mindfulness, it's not just about sitting on a cushion and chanting. It's about bringing awareness to your daily life.
Okay.
Paying attention to your thoughts, your feelings, your sensations. Being present in the moment rather than getting swept away by worries about the future or regrets about the past.
It sounds like a pretty valuable skill to have, especially in a world that feels, well, increasingly chaotic and unpredictable.
It is. And the good news is, mindfulness is something you can cultivate through practice. Even just a few minutes of meditation each day can make a difference.
So we're financially savvy, we're diversified, we're informed, we're mindful. Anything else we can do to prepare for this changing world order?
One more thing, community.
Community?
Dalio emphasizes the importance of building strong relationships. With people you trust, people who share your values, people who will support you through thick and thin.
So find your tribe, your people, your chosen family.
Exactly. In times of uncertainty and change, having that strong support network can make all the difference. It's about knowing you're not alone, that you have people you can rely on.
It's like having a safety net to catch you when you fall.
That's a great way to put it. And remember, community is a two-way street. It's not just about receiving support, it's about giving support too, helping others, contributing to something larger than yourself, making a positive impact on the world.
So be a good neighbor, be a good citizen, be a good human.
That's the spirit. Because ultimately, the world is a reflection of ourselves. The more we cultivate kindness, compassion, cooperation, the more we create a world that's worth living in.
Beautifully said. I think we've covered Dalio's key points for building resilience in this changing world order. Understand your finances, diversify your investments in your life, stay informed, cultivate mindfulness, and build strong communities.
It's a powerful toolkit for navigating the challenges and the opportunities that lie ahead. And remember, it's not about predicting the future with certainty. It's about being prepared for a range of possibilities, being adaptable, staying true to your values.
And it's about remembering that we're all in this together. We're all part of this grand experiment called humanity. And the choices we make, both individually and collectively, they'll determine the course of history.
That's a profound thought to end on. So listener, go forth and be the change you wish to see in the world.
That's it for this deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed exploring the changing world order with us. We encourage you to continue the conversation, share your thoughts and insights, and work together to build a better future for all.
Thank you for joining us at Wisdom House, where we bring you timeless insights from the greatest books. If you found this deep dive valuable, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Wisdom House. Stay curious, stay inspired, and we'll see you in the next video.